As mentioned previously in the series of lectures, one of the things that's core is the idea of accepting responsibility for the quality of work that we perform, making sure that we are working at the height of professionalism in the work we do. And that means we take personal ownership for the work we do and the way we perform it. So we're responsible for checking ourselves to make sure we meet the standards of performance. And so what does this mean in terms of managing change in a responsible way? So let's take a look at this. We've seen this model before from Dr. Yoshio Kondo, and we see that there is this respect for humanity that is breeding this understanding of humanity. So it's not respect for the individual. The Japanese word actually has in the middle of individual, the key that differentiates is a one kanji character, which talks about moving it from respect for individual to respect for humanity. It's for society as a whole, whether it's the country we work in or the organization we have. As a matter of fact, the very guidelines of Toyota begin with this love of country and respect for the country as the first principle, and it ends up with treating people as if they are part of a family. So this respect for humanity is not just saying, I'm right, you're wrong because you have to respect me as an individual. It's about building mutual respect for how we collaborate together. It's not like the individual of the raw, rugged individual like a Western cowboy. What it is, it's more like a hive of bees or a colony of ants that's operating together in a collective way to achieve mutual outcomes. In other words, they're going to work together. And we have standard work coming in. This was the study that was the Japanese studied about the United States industry during World War II when they trained the housewives to become the production workers. And how do we get them to do standard work and do it right and quickly? And that was called training within industry. That was trained in Toyota in Japan in the early 1950s. And then the guidance and encouragement for the supervisors. This is the leadership principle. This is the role of the supervisor is to educate and motivate the workers. And then the workers take responsibility for self-control. That is this idea we've talked about before, Jisu Kanri. And as they improve in their ability, they start having confidence to participate in the flow of processes. And as they're participating in the flow of processes, they start getting an interest in what are people doing in the work that they're giving to me? Is there something that could help me do a better job? Or maybe I have to make corrections, or something like this. How could I stop that? And then when I'm giving product to somebody else, is my work acceptable for them? So we start getting this teamwork built up over time. And so self-control is really this leverage to establish sound daily management. And when we bring all of the people together, that then becomes the fundamental mechanism by which improvement is done. It's called a Jisuikan team. And when each level of the organization accepts their responsibility for performance of quality work and takes on personal ownership to do that work and get it done right, that's what we mean by this idea that was first voiced by the Toyota management as Jikotai Kanketsu in 1996. So we start seeing that this motivation is built up. Now, motivated teamwork is essential. So just delegating information to a team or action to a team or work to a team does not assure their work will either get done or get done right. So delegating authority to perform an action does not alleviate responsibility for results. If I as a manager say, you go and do it, it doesn't mean I'm no longer responsible for results. Accountability is maintained by the person who's responsible, that's the process owner. So the process owner remains accountable. This is why in Japan, when the executive has a major failure in the problem, what they tend to do is they tend to apologize to the customers and then submit their resignation. That means that they are accepting the ultimate responsibility in terms of work done wrong because they didn't guide the work in the right direction. So the formula for motivated teamwork starts with delivering clear communications of expectations, coupled with setting targets that are measurable and objective, training people in tools and methods that are required, allocating resources required to do the actual work, and assigning decision rights to the team so they can self-regulate or self-manage their own work. So finally, management must prioritize the work and resource use if the conflicting requirements are levied on teams or individuals by these teams. So if we have this situation where I have multiple projects squeezing out the value-added work as we've seen before, what that means is management must prioritize to resolve that so people have the time reserved to do the value-adding work and make the improvement. So management must manage the change implementation process. And so what we start seeing is that when we have this situation, management does have a responsibility. Taiichi Ohno said, when you go to the Gemba, going to Gemba 1, ask what you can give them. Do not go to scold them. Don't tell them what they're doing wrong. That's not the way of Kaizen. So what are the gifts? So the gifts that management has to give, first of all, are direct responsibility, a clear job with a measurable objective, defined boundaries or limits of responsibility, and agreed upon clear schedules for performance. They have dedicated resources. Do they have the necessary methods, tools, training to accomplish the job? And do they have the right technical support or operational support to get the work done? And finally, decision rights. Have we given them the authority to make decisions in this area of responsibility, including the commitment of budgeted funds and assignments of work to people who are needed to participate on those teams? If we haven't done those things, management has not given the right responsibilities, and ownership remains with management. Responsibility remains with management. There is no effective delegation without giving those three gifts, if you will, to the workers. So the responsibilities of the workers in Gemba 1 are, first of all, becoming efficient, effective, and economic process doers. They are producing the value of the organization. So what's the responsibility of the worker? It's learning how to perform their own work to the level required to accomplish the standard work. It's expanding the work to work in adjacent areas, so as they start understanding what they get from their source or give to their sink, if you will, the direction that they're passing their work process. What is necessary to do those jobs right? It's performing work according to standard requirements. And if the standard requirements are not right, helping to improve them. Check the quality of the incoming process delivers and the quality of their own work to make sure that the work is being done properly. Improve the efficiency of their own work so that the performance is done in less cycle time. And then increase the integration of their work with the system of performance. So what can we do to make this work more aligned to the overall flow of work in the organization? And then suggesting system-level improvements that could increase effectiveness or efficiency of the work processes beyond the group's scope of their normal actions. So these are what we would expect in a system where the operator is a full participant in continual improvement. The supervisors in Gemba 2, we expect them to be efficient, effective economic process owners. And so what's the responsibility of the supervisory function? Well, this is usually very different than what we see in Western organizations when we look in the Japanese organizations. So their job is to make sure that we document process activities as standard work for flow, as well as for failure risks. They train the workers in performance of standard work and problem solving. They monitor the process for flow efficiency and task performance. They check worker performance against the standard work, so they'll do an audit to make sure the workers are following standard work and that they are actually practicing what they have learned. They'll facilitate problem-solving team activities with workers, first to keep the production line going, and when they can't keep the production line going, to work quickly to bring the line back to speed. They'll assure workflow balance and equity in the tasking of operators so nobody is overburdened in the flow of the work. They'll also solicit task improvement ideas from the workers. So what can we do to improve the work? And then they'll conduct small-scale experiments to improve process performance. They'll recommend system-level performance improvements in management. What can we do beyond my work area that would actually help to improve the overall performance? And then they will also participate in those system-wide areas where they represent their own work area and its contribution to the system performance. Now, to understand this, we start getting into the realm of there are a couple of subsets of responsibility here. So one is engineering responsibility. So engineers are responsible to design product functions properly. In other words, the right quality. And they inform their organization of risks or consequences that arise if things go wrong. So if things are going to go wrong, the engineers have to recognize there's some probability this will happen. And if it does, these are the expected consequences or maybe even the unintended consequences that occur as a result of those particular issues. So how do we hold an engineer responsible or accountable for quality? Well, we have to clearly communicate what is the customer looking for. So what is this engineering design functionality that is necessary to have? They have to have training in methods and competence development and provided suitable tools to do the work. I know one major company where they're actually building integrated mechanical equipment and they're still using 2D CAD/CAM systems, two-dimensional. Whereas the problem is making three-dimensional parts fit together. So clearly the tools that they have are ineffective because the tools cannot design all three dimensions and actually assure that they will have the right fit, form, and function. And then the engineers must have the ability to self-regulate the deliverable using engineering best practices to design, develop, and evaluate the functionality and therefore deliver a properly engineered product. Now, management responsibility is another type of responsibility. This is activity delegated from an accountable authority that's accomplished as a task or a project. So the focus of management accountability is assure the performance of schedule, customer satisfaction, legal regulatory compliance, financial austerity and performance, information integrity, ethical, social guidelines, and mitigation of business and technical risks. There's an awful lot involved in management responsibility. So if we're going to hold a manager accountable, then managers must have clearly defined business objectives and performance targets that they agree to, unambiguous delegation of decision rights, resources, and expenditure authority, and the ability to self-regulate their tasks using best practices to assure the desired outcomes. So they get a limited authority within a particular budget, within a particular area of responsibility to work, and then they become responsible for that. So there are different roles and responsibilities for a process designer. So these are coaching leaders in developing improvement strategies and assuring the deployment effort, providing quality assurance. And there are many of the different things that they are helping with. Building measurement systems, making sure the measurement systems have integrity, making sure the right projects are selected, major projects are coordinated, people are trained to do the jobs right and trained in the methods of improvement. Workers are engaged in value-adding work and projects are technically correct, that roadblocks to projects are removed and management reports inspire the right decisions by the management given the data that they have. So in other words, that the work that is done is actually meeting the requirements management has for reading and interpreting and understanding improvements. So it's not creating something esoteric they can't readily understand, but it's making sure that we frame the problem in the way that management is able to comprehend it and make clear decisions. Information systems thus have to capture the right decisions, and the projects have to deliver relevant information so management can make those decisions. And there has to be a coherent process improvement program that follows how these things are being done. Now, daily management is where we make the implementation. So all changes, all project for improvements are making changes to the daily management system. That's where we produce value. And so we want to eliminate Muda waste from all sources. Understand streamlined flows, find and reduce the special cause variation that occurs in quality and time, improve safe operating procedures, reduce transaction costs, foolproof to make sure that people can't make inadvertent errors or mistakes, accepting QA responsibility at each point in work. That means involving the people in this self-management of their work, this Jake Kotai Konketsu, at each appropriate level, and pursuing perfection in achieving work capability. And so that means the process capability to perform the work as designed, and capacity, which means full production to the capability that has been designed into the system. So as we start taking a look, we see there's a number of tools that are used here. So to have a continual improvement culture, there's two types. One is incremental improvement, and we can see that daily management, it's based on process thinking. There's a Kaizen event based on lean thinking, and also DMAIC projects based on statistical thinking. So the lean thinking tends to be daily management and Kaizen events, and the Six Sigma focus will embody also the lean thinking plus the DMAIC statistical thinking, and DMADV, which is the design thinking for breakthrough improvement projects. And so we'll see that we can either change the current work, and that's the incremental improvement, or we can design new work, and that's the breakthrough improvement. And as we look at this, we see there's basically a number of different roles. There's the process doer, that's the worker, the process facilitator, that's like the supervisor, and then there's the process investigator, that would be like the person who is guiding the improvement projects that are larger than what can be done by the daily management team. A process designer, who is actually building the systems design, and the process owner, who has the ultimate responsibility for improvement and integration of systems across the organization. So responsible ownership builds leadership capacity. And developing capacity to lead is more than just competence building. It's not just taking a course. It's a personal maturing process, which is only developed over time. It's not an instant meal. It's not, if you will, instant pudding, is how Deming referred to it. And what we see in this is that if we take a look at the levels of the maturity, that there is a line that occurs in this process analysis stage where we are moving from the basic level of daily management into the strategic level. And so at level 7, we have developed our standards. We have practice levels, or learning levels, are levels 1 to 4. Practice levels are 5 to 8, where we start getting into the strategic components of projects. So the first step is we're creating capability and competence. Leadership levels are levels 8 through 10, and this is creating disruption and competitiveness in the organization. And what we start seeing is, as we move through this, we have different levels of leadership maturity. So at level 4, in the maturity of the organization, we have what we might call chaotic leadership. And this is where a functional manager is asked to manage a cross-functional process. They have their own personal functional knowledge, but they don't have the knowledge of the work that's required in those other areas of their responsibility. As they formalize that system, they learn and they become knowledgeable about functional integration across the flow of the business. That means they become competent. They become capable as they get experience in working across the functions and start developing a measurement system. And as they connect the work processes to the business processes at level 7, they become consistent. And now they have a demonstrated ability to lead across the functions. At level 8, they start embedding strategic thinking and they become clairvoyant. So they have this ability to understand the future business implications and interpret the probabilities of future performance in terms of how that will impact the organization over time. So the question that we want to ask ourselves is, how well have we advanced? So improvement can be either incremental or breakthrough. It could be evolutionary or revolutionary. And since improvement begins by establishing a baseline condition, where are we starting from? That's where we're going to document the beginning of the gains we make. How will we determine where to start? Is there a beginning place, an entry-level employee and their competence? How will you judge the advancement beyond that level? So individually, I want you to rate how you and your team members work by using a scale of achieved maturity in your combined contribution. So use the scale on the next slide. How well have you designed a working system to achieve your objectives consistently? What else needs to be done to consistently increase the mutual performance capability of your organization? So all change happens one project at a change. The word change says there's a base state. We're moving from one state to another. Kaizen literally means change for the better. That's a desired direction for change. Should we accept chaos as the original state, or would we like a stronger foundation in our organization? Juran made the comment, without a standard, there can be no improvement. So how do we know from what is the foundation for our change? What's the base state from which change begins? And estimating the instability of chaos is a necessary initial step to manage process and achieve Kaizen better. So we have these 3 levels of learning we'd like to go through. We know that this is triple loop learning process. As we go through these, we're doing the SDCA cycle 3 times. And finally, we create a standard that we can use as a foundation for building cross-functional change. So level 1 is understand the special sources of variation. Number 2 is eliminate special causes and document the process. Level 3 is simplify the process by eliminating waste and loss across the process. So this is this process called UDSO. Step 2 is getting us to level 8 and beyond. It's optimizing the performance. So we're moving from standardizing, basically as we are moving from up to level 4, we start our standardization process. We standardize processes, standardized measures, integrated business systems. Then we improve by simplifying the system, eliminating waste. And then we transform, perhaps by automating processes, using IT systems and so forth, and implementing a new business culture. So the second and third SDCA cycles happen after we've done that first one. So impressive standard work is never absolute in practice, according to Taiichi Ohno. He says, first, pick a starting point that fits you best and create a solid foundation, which will help you gather useful clues for establishing a more desirable and attainable achievement of standard work. Do not aim for perfection. Create a lenient standard work to begin with. So what Taiichi Ohno is saying, make sure that when you begin this journey, that you make it so that people can discover and change it. Don't make it what you think is the best automatically, because people can't then initiate change and they won't develop the habit of continual improvement. They won't develop this habit of being curious about what things do and what doing things in different ways could actually make changes happen to the outcomes that are delivered to customers. The most important thing about improvement is to start. It's not to figure out what's the best possible method or tools. It's to start the improvement and to start it simply. The second most important thing is to continue improving, not to give up because we had a failure or we had some resistance or something like this, but it's not to give up. I remember I was meeting with the president of Imperial Oil of Canada, and he mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, this is our 119th executive team's continual improvement monthly meeting. And just says that talks about 119 monthly meetings. We're basically coming up the next month on their 10-year anniversary of doing this on a regular basis. The third most important thing is challenge perfection. Why can't we move these things to higher levels of performance? Let's not be satisfied with being 93% right, 95% right, 98% right. Remember, it's that last few percentage points where all of the loss that we have is occurring. And there's much more to be gained in terms of improvement and reduced costs and reduced losses by closing that gap. This is what Juran called the great unfinished work of managing for quality. So, like scientific knowledge, standard work is never settled. It's always open to innovative discoveries, doing things differently, and moving the organization in different directions. So when we commission a major change project, we start seeing level 2 managers, supervisors. There are the ones who are going to be dealing with 2 types of projects. So the management team has to begin and routinely monitor the second of these, which are the Hoshin projects. Hoshin projects require long-term planning of the whole organization. They should be part of a measurable, concrete vision for future success. So level 2 managers can supervise those projects that are within the state and capability of the workers to deal with. We might call those Kaizen Kanri projects, or improvement projects that they can do within their own scope of benefit and control with the additional resources or budget provided by management. The Hoshin projects require additional support going outside. So this idea of selecting the projects and dealing this with this implementation, this is part of the process of management's involvement in daily management. And that is that they provide them the resources, those gifts that extend the budget, the resources, and the capacity and capability of the daily management system to help accomplish the organization's future goal. So the opportunities for improvement, which ones will we address? So think about what we're going to deal with. How will we actually expand and formulate the projects? Think about this using an Excel template, something like this. So what are the business areas? So technical operations, project management, support systems, infrastructure systems. Can we identify the opportunity for improvement? How about change projects for operations? That's daily management. Breakthrough change projects, Kaizen Kanri projects. Disruptive transformation projects, Hoshin Kanri projects. What opportunities exist within our business system that we can see today, and how will we prioritize those for actually achieving them? There's an old Zen Buddhist proverb: he who has walked 100 miles or who has 100 miles to walk should think 90 miles is only half of the journey. The last 10 miles takes most of the journey. The last 10% of improvement takes most of the effort. Getting to a 90% correct process is relatively easy. Moving towards perfection is exceptionally hard. So thank you very much for bearing with me in this conversation on responsibility and what we do about it. And we'll come back and we'll have our final module in just a little bit.